channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 15th of July of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, and most likely during the upcoming night between the 15th and the 16th of July of 2026, the Russians will carry out a mega strike. As of the end of the 15th of July of 2026, we know for sure that at least 4 Tu-22 M3 strategic bombers have taken off from the Engels 2 air base. Their initial course is southward. There is a threat of Ha-22 cruise missile strikes on Zmyiny Island and Odessa, Mykolaiv regions. So let's take a look at this map, and these are the areas that the Russians are able to hit when using Tu-22 M3 strategic air bombers. And as you can see, there are several possible positions, and each position cover a certain territory of Ukraine. So according to this article and according to monitoring channels, the Russian Tu-22 M3 strategic bombers is moving southward, which means that currently these aircrafts are moving from the area of the city of Saratov, from the area of the Engels airfield, in the southwestern direction towards Crimea and the Sea of Azov. So according to this map, we can see that there are two possible positions in the area of the Sea of Azov and in the area of Crimea. And according to these pictures and these areas, orange and this area, the Russians are able to hit almost everything between the cities of Kharkiv and Odessa. So when talking about possible targets that the Russians most likely will hit during the upcoming night, we are talking about this territory. So everything between this red line and the territories under Russian control could be attacked by Russians during the upcoming night between the 15th and the 16th of July of 2026. But due to the current situation in the area of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, we believe that most likely the Russian strategic air aviation will hit the city of Odessa with the purpose to deal significant damage to the Odessa port infrastructure, fuel infrastructure, import-export infrastructure, and of course to destroy the military infrastructure through the city of Odessa itself and through the entire Odessa region. Another important thing is that right before we started making this video, several sources reported that the Russians also launched drones in the direction of the city of Kiev. You know, that's about this attack about drones through the northern direction. These days we stopped receiving updates about this matter. When talking about May or when talking about June, the Russians were using the northern parts of Ukraine to attack the city of Kiev almost every single day. And if you remember, there were a lot of talks about the equipment along the border between Belarus and Ukraine, and that the Russians were using this equipment to attack the city of Kiev and to attack the northern regions. But these days we see that the Russians have stopped attacking this territory and the Russians shift focus in the southern direction. But today we received a very interesting report. Today, probably for the first time since the moments when, according to information we have, the Belarusians turned off equipment along the border, the Russians attacked a gas station in the area of the settlement of Malin. This is the Zhytomyr region, and this is the gas station that was attacked by Russians. And these pictures were published by a local source, and according to these pictures, as you can see, this gas station was wiped out. And the most important thing, first of all, this is a first gas station through the western parts of Ukraine. This is the first gas station along MO7 road destroyed by Russians. And another important thing, that pro-Ukrainian sources claimed that when the Russians launched drones, those drones were moving along the border between Ukraine and the Republic of Belarus, and Ukrainian sources reported that the Belarusians turned on equipment, turned on these transporters, those communication equipment, with the purpose to coordinate the Russian drones that were attacking this territory. So this is a very important situation, and the question is whether the Russians are planning to continue, or it just was something like a signal or a message to Ukrainians that if they don't stop the situation in the area of the Black Sea and the Azov Sea, then the Russians will turn on equipment along the border, and then Russians will destroy every single gas station along MO7 road between Poland and the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kiev. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to happen next, but most likely, once again, this upcoming night, the Russians will strike Ukraine with strategic aviation, with that hundreds of drones, most likely the Belarusians will turn on equipment, and we'll see thousands of drones flying over the central and the eastern parts of Ukraine. Few more details about the previous strikes. The Russians during the previous 24 hours, as well as yesterday and the day before yesterday, were mainly concentrated on the Odessa region. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos on this matter. We received lots of updates about different objects of fuel infrastructure, of the energy infrastructure, of the military infrastructure that were damaged or hit or destroyed by Russians. In this video, for example, we can see oil tanks that were most likely completely wiped out by Russians. We are talking about this facility that was destroyed yesterday, but as you can see, we still receive reports that the Ukrainians, more precisely fire crews, haven't managed to extinguish the fire. Furthermore, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation provided us additional report about the previous 24-hour attack. The Russians were attacking logistics and the Russians were attacking vessels. Today we received the report that few more vessels were destroyed by Russians through the area of Odessa, and as we discussed at the beginning of this video, two M3 aircrafts are upcoming in coming hours, and probably while you when you see the video, when you watch the video, most likely the Russians either will carry out the attack or the Russians will already finish this attack. So let's move further. The Ukrainians also changed their tactics through the southern parts through the southern directions. During the previous 7 days, the Ukrainians were mainly attacking the Sea of Azov, and these days we received lots of videos about vessels and tankers that were destroyed by the armed forces of Ukraine. And today, pro-Ukrainian sources published another picture where we can see that during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians destroyed additional 20 vessels. Later, pro-Ukrainian sources clarified that this time the Ukrainians were attacking vessels and tankers, commercial vessels, not through the Sea of Azov, but through the eastern parts of the Black Sea. So the Ukrainians, during the previous 7 days, were mainly attacking this territory, and as a result of those attacks, the Russians lost, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, up to 100 of vessels. And according to information we have today, the Ukrainians were attacking most likely this part of the Black Sea, and as a result of this attack, the Ukrainians managed to deal damage or to destroy up to 20 commercial vessels. Another important thing, that the Russians most likely were ready to this escalation, so that is why during the previous 24 hours we received lots of videos where Russians were using drones, Lancet drones, to attack the Navy drones, to attack different types of drones with the purpose to secure the eastern parts of the Black Sea. So as we can see, the battle for the Black Sea accelerates, but we understand that both the Russians and the Ukrainians have completely different objectives through this area. When talking about Russians, they are tasked to save control of the Black Sea, to save free navigation, to have the possibilities to use ports like Taganrov, Azov, Novorossiysk, so every single port along the territory of Russia for the worldwide trade and commercial. So this is the main purpose of Russians. But as for Ukrainian side, it seems that the Ukrainians are ready to the situation when nobody will be able to use either the Black Sea or the Azov Sea. So it seems that we see the situation when Ukrainians are going to cut the Black Sea completely, both for Russians and for Ukrainians, and it seems that they are ready for this. Meanwhile, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is returning back to Ukraine. I would like to remind you that during the previous 2 days, he was in France, where he had a meeting, where he had talks with the representatives of the coalition of willing. Lots of different statements, documents were signed and were made during the previous 42 hours. Zelensky was promised to receive license for Scout missiles, for different air defense missiles. And if you remember, the United States of America, before Zelensky, came to France, reported and warned Ukraine that during the next 72 hours, the Russians most likely would carry out a massive attack through the entire territory of Ukraine. But while Zelensky was abroad, so the Russians didn't attack Ukraine, and the time came when Zelensky had to return back to Ukraine. So that is why he tried to create something like a secure road to Ukraine. So that is why today Zelensky returned to Ukraine not alone but with a delegation. Today, according to information we have, Zelensky returned back with Ursula von der Leyen. He returned back with the president of Moldova, the Romanian president, Serbian president. So lots of European politics came to Kiev with Zelensky. So that is why now Zelensky is on the territory of Ukraine, as we can see. And as you can see, as soon as the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, returned, the Russians began probably their mega or massive attack. And who knows, maybe the Russians would try to deal something interesting during the upcoming night. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to happen next. As of the end of the 15th of July of 2026, we still haven't received anything on the matter, whether the European delegation has left the territory of Kiev and the territory of Ukraine. Maybe they still haven't, so let's wait and see what is going to happen next. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates. And first, let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. The clashes through the western Zaporozhye direction continue. I would like to remind you that during the late 2025 and at the beginning of 2026, the Russians were advancing in the northern direction, and according to information we have, first groups of Russian forces managed to enter the settlements of Grigorovka and Veselyanka. So let's take a look at the map on the 28th of February of 2026, before the Russians were forced to fall back from this territory. So this is a map of 4 months ago situation. Now let's take a look at the map on the 15th of July of 2026, and as you can see, the Russians since the beginning of March of 2026 have lost lots of territories. The Ukrainians managed to recapture or to enter the settlement of Stepnogorsk, but by the time when Ukrainians entered the settlement of Stepnogorsk, the Russians finished regrouping and began another counter-offensive operation with the purpose to return everything back they lost between 1st of March and probably beginning of July. And these are the changes on the ground. So this is the end, for example, of the 14th of July of 2026, and this is the end of the 15th of July of 2026. Several very reliable pro-Russian sources reported that the Russians, as a result of an offensive operation, managed to take under complete control over these territories, and the Russians continue advancing further in the northern direction. Most likely the Russians would try to take under complete control once again all these villages, but this time the Russians are moving using broad frontline attack, not just through the only city of Stepnogorsk, but probably using this big front line. The Russians decided to use much slower but more stable. Furthermore, the Russians attacked main logistic lines that Ukrainians used to introduce additional forces in this area, and most likely in coming 2 months we'll see very heavy clashes for this pocket once again. The city of Orekhov, the Russians continue attacking the settlement with aviation. Once again, the Russians struck the central part of the Orekhov agglomeration, the multi-story part of the city, multi-story block. FAB 3000 wiped out these facilities or these buildings from the northern parts of the city, but the Russians made no attempts to attack the city itself, which means that the Russians continue softening defense of Ukrainians through the city. As for the eastern Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything. As for the northern Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received just a video from the southeastern parts of the settlement of Podubne, where we can see how Russians were attacking temporary deployment points of the armored force of Ukraine through this tree line. So this is another confirmation that most likely the Ukrainians, as a result of the June-July counter-offensive operation, managed to recapture several villages on the Russian side of the river of Volcha. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the Slaviansk-Drushkovka agglomeration. During the previous 12 hours, 24 hours, we haven't received changes on the ground, but we have a lots of, as you can see, updates. The Russians continue attacking positions, temporary deployment points of the armed forces of Ukraine, but at the same time without changes on the ground. Now let's talk about the northern directions. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting changes through the Kharkiv direction. First of all, the Russians destroyed at least two gas stations between the cities of Kharkiv and Sumy. One of the gas stations was destroyed through the southern parts of the settlement of Bogodukhov. Here we have civilians moving along the Kharkivskaya Street. As you can see from this angle, a gas station. We can see or what left from gas station later. These pictures were published, and here we can see that the gas station was completely reduced to ruins by Russians. Another gas station was attacked and destroyed by Russians along the Sumsky Shliach Street, and here we have a video published by pro-Russian sources where we can see the ruins, but not a gas station. So the Russians continue neutralizing roads between city of Kharkiv and the mainland of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Russians continue their offensive operation both through the city of Kazachye Lopan and through the northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. As for the settlement of Kazachye Lopan, today we have changes. As you can see, the Russians, as you can see, continue advancing along the eastern bank of the river of Lopan. So this is a very small river, but the Russians, as we can see, captured everything to the east of the river. The Ukrainians still control the western bank of the river, but it seems that the Russians right now would try to encircle the Ukrainians and to continue advancing through the territory. As for the northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region, the Russians, it seems, managed to break through Ukraine's defense through the most northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. We're talking about this territory because these days the Russians almost every single day publish reports about additional changes on the ground, and the changes are taking place not just in one single place but through the entire northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. Furthermore, the Russians accelerate the use of aviation through this territory. There are not so many strongholds and defense belts of the armed forces of Ukraine, so that is why the Russians have more chances to destroy strongholds in a very, very short period of time. In this video, we can see a stronghold to the east of the city of Escalates that was attacked by Russians. Maybe the Russians are planning to encircle to continue the process of encirclement of the settlement of Escalates using a wider range of offensive operation. So in coming days, we expect changes through this territory. Now let's talk about the most northern parts of the Sumy region. Here we have changes as well. During the previous 12 hours, and probably since the beginning of this week, the group of forces north published several reports that the Russians answered the settlement of Ulanovo, and today the map has been adjusted. As you can see, we've colored the most southwestern parts of the settlement. It seems that Russians answered Ulanovo through the southwestern parts of the settlement, and these are the changes on the ground between the 13th and the 15th of July of 2026. So the battle for the settlement has begun and the Russians continue advancing. As for this territory, it seems that in coming 2 or 3 weeks the Russians would be able to shorten the distances and to maintain the line through the entire northeastern parts of Sumy region, and then from these positions the Russians would continue their offensive operation further in the direction of the settlement of Glukhov. So the clashes for the northern parts of Ukraine accelerates as well. And that's it for today. The military summary.